Hi, I'm Kevin McCormick. Welcome to this episode of Lake Orion Sports Update. We've got all the latest news in Lake Orion sports, including basketball, hockey, wrestling, and so much more, all coming up right now. On Tuesday, January 19th, the girls basketball team traveled to Brandon High School for a non-conference game. The Dragons dominated the first half, scoring 17 points in the first quarter, 19 in the second. Brandon scored 12 in the first and 7 in the second. Brandon dominated the second half of the game by scoring 12 points in the third quarter and 14 in the fourth. The Dragons scored 8 in the third and 7 in the fourth. Lake Orion ultimately won the game by a score of 51-44. Maddie Novak, the freshman sensation, led the Dragons with 22 points. On Thursday, January 21st, the Lady Dragons basketball team hosted a home game against the North Farmington Raiders. The game was hard-fought by both teams on both sides of the ball. At the end of the first quarter, Lake Orion had the lead with a score of 9-8. At the end of the second quarter, the score was taken by North Farmington 14-13. And at the end of the third, the score was 23-21 in favor of North Farmington. The Dragons rallied in the fourth quarter, outscoring North Farmington to win the game 34-31. Freshman Maddie Novak once again led the Dragons with 18 points. On Tuesday, January 26th, the girls basketball team hosted a home match against the Royal Oak Ravens. After the first quarter, the Dragons were in the lead by 2 points at 15-13. Royal Oak dominated the second quarter, scoring 10 points to the Dragons 3. Lake Orion played better in the third quarter, scoring 13 to Royal Oak 7. And Royal Oak controlled the fourth quarter, outscoring the Dragons 12-8. The final score was Royal Oak 42 and Dragons 39. Maddie Novak led the Dragons with 17 points, and Evelyn Wishmeyer chipped in 11. The Lady Dragons hosted a home game against Rochester Adams on Friday, January 29th. Lake Orion started off strong, earning a 7-point lead against the Highlanders with the score of 13-6. The Dragons continued to play well in the second, scoring 17 points to 10. After halftime, Rochester Adams pushed back to try and close the gap, but Lake Orion remained in the lead, earning 16 points to Adams' 12. In the final quarter of play, Lake Orion once again took the lead 10-2, winning the game with a final score of 56-36. Leading scorer of the match was Maddie Novak with 21 points. Tessa Nuss followed with 13, and Evelyn Wishmeyer had 11. Here are the current OAA white standings. On Tuesday, January 19th, the boys basketball team traveled to Stony Creek for an OAA Blue League matchup. The Cougars scored 24 in the first quarter and 21 in the second. The Dragons scored 18 in the first and 16 in the second to enter halftime down 45-34. The Dragons took over in the third quarter and went on a 21-5 scoring run. The game was tied at 55 entering the fourth quarter. The Dragons and Cougars fought hard in the fourth, changing the lead a handful of times. It was Stony Creek's clutch free throws that defeated the Dragons late in the game. Stony Creek was at the line 35 times, whereas the Dragons only made it to the free throw stripe 7 times. Stony Creek won the game in the final seconds with a score 76-71. David Gomez was the high scorer for the Dragons with 20 points. On January 22nd, the Farmington Falcons came to the Lake Orion Fieldhouse. The first quarter was a back-and-forth battle, with the Falcons scoring 15 and the Dragons 16. Farmington took control in the second quarter, outscoring Lake Orion 29-19. The score was 44-35 at the half, with Farmington in the lead. The Dragons rallied in the second half of the game, outscoring the Falcons 42-28, making the final score of the game Lake Orion 77, Farmington 72. On January 29th, the Dragons traveled to Oxford to play an away game against the arch rivals, the Oxford Wildcats. The Wildcats started the game with an intense 10-0 lead against Lake Orion, but the Dragons battled back with a 13-2 run and took a 1-point lead. Oxford put up 16 points in the second quarter, while the Dragons only managed to earn 10, leaving the halftime score at 32-29. The third quarter was very close, with only a 1-point difference in Lake Orion's favor. The Dragons continued to play well in the fourth quarter and took the lead with 19-11. Lake Orion won the rival match with a final score of 71-65. The Lake Orion top scorers were David Gomez, who had 27, Noah Harris chipped in with 19, and Jalen Wiggins followed up with 9 points. Here are the current standings in the OAA Blue Division. On Saturday, January 16th, the Dragons hockey team was home against Farmington United. At the end of the first period, the Dragons trailed 1-0. In the second period, Lake Orion tied the score to make it 1 apiece. In the third, Farmington scored a goal while the Dragons scored 2. The Dragons ultimately beat Farmington United 3-2. Andrew Laurent, Mitchell Burney, and Jake Chappie all scored for Lake Orion. On Thursday, January 21st, the Lake Orion hockey team squared off against Berkeley Unified. Berkeley started hot and never let up. The first 2 goals of the game were scored by Berkeley. Lake Orion's Bridger Stevenson scored for the Dragons to narrow the deficit. Berkeley would score one more time before the period ended. The second period was a defensive battle. Only Berkeley would score 1 goal in the second. The third period opened up some chances for the Dragons, but they were only able to capitalize on 1 while Berkeley scored 2 more. The final score of the game was Berkeley 6, Lake Orion 2. On January 23rd, Lake Orion played an away game against Rochester United. The Dragons fell to their opponent by a hefty score of 7-0. Rochester United scored multiple goals during each period, sealing the shutout victory. The first period was 3-0, and the second and third periods were 2-0 each. On Friday, January 29th, Lake Orion traveled to the Chelsea Arctic Arena to face off against the Marquette Redmen. Unfortunately for the Dragons, the game would end in another loss with a score of 5-1. The Redmen started off strong, scoring 3 goals in the first period. Marquette scored 2 more goals in the second period, and Lake Orion scored their lone goal in the evening. The 2 teams were unable to put up any points during the final period of play. On January 30th, Lake Orion played another away game, this time against West Ottawa. The Dragons fared better than the 3 previous games and clinched the win with a final score of 5-3. West Ottawa started off the game with a 1-point lead against the Dragons, with it being 2-1 at the end of the first. Lake Orion managed to tie the game in the second period, earning 2 points to West Ottawa's 1. Lake Orion pressed hard and scored 2 points in the third period and secured the victory. Here are the current OAA Red standings. The Lake Orion girls bowling team competed in the Oakland County Tournament on Saturday, January 16th. Lake Orion led the qualifying block of teams with a pin count of 3,494 to secure a spot in the 16-team bracket. In the first round of action, the Dragons defeated Clarkston 414-250. In the quarterfinals, Lake Orion defeated Walled Lake Northern 377-300. In the semifinals, the Dragons defeated Farmington Harrison 407-374. In the finals match, the Dragons defeated Waterford Kettering 352-309. This is the second straight year that Lake Orion has won the Oakland County Tournament. Hannah Mix scored the highest game of the day with 247. Madeline Marcetti placed third for a combined score of 605, and Mix took fourth with 604. On Thursday, January 21st, the girls bowling team was challenged by Farmington Harrison. It was a back-and-forth battle to the very end. The Dragons and Harrison tied at 15 apiece. Hannah Mix and Lexi Babbage led the Dragons. On Wednesday, January 27th, the girls bowling team traveled to Berkeley for an away match against Birmingham United. The Dragons had no problem with winning, beating Birmingham United 23-7. Lexi Babbage was the high scorer in the first game with a score of 181, and Savannah Roll was the high scorer in the second game with a score of 206. The Dragon wrestler team traveled to White Lake for the Lakeland Invitational on Saturday the 23rd. The Dragons started at a disadvantage, being able to fill only 9 weight classes out of 14. That didn't stop them, though. 4 of the Lake Orion wrestlers that wrestled in championship matches, and 8 wrestlers scored points for the team. Brendan Thompson and Anthony Orselli placed first at 285 and 171 pounds. Tyler Modoc and Denny Matthews placed second at 106 and 189 pounds. Jaden Fisher, Noah Smith, and John Ball each placed third at 145, 130, and 119 pounds. At the end of the tournament, Lake Orion placed second with 154.5 points. Trenton took first with 158. Thanks for watching this episode of Lake Orion Sports Update. I'm Kevin McCormick. Make sure you tune in next time for the latest news during the winter sports season. We'll see you next time.